Hey guys, it's Dmitry here. Today I would like to continue talking about Docker containerization and about history, how we came up with this Docker containerization and why we using it and why the great solution and how we came up with that, right? So first thing first, guys. Historically, at some stage, big companies like I don't know Coca-Cola or Walmart, they you know started to make the infrastructure bigger and bigger and bigger, and at some stage it just exploded, right? And the only way at that stage it was just buying new servers like this one that I'm showing you here, and buy more and more of them in order to run all this the same applications, obviously, right? So because if the number of customers growing, people more and more people would like to access your application, and of course you have to buy new hardware if it's the only solution for you. And at this stage in history, that was the only solution. So, and again, it was the solution, but there were so many downsides, right? So first of all, buying a new hardware is always expensive, right? And secondly, you need to space to store it, and then you have to maintain all of that, right? So it is quite expensive solution even nowadays. But can you imagine at that stage in history it was super expensive? So no wonder many people thought, all right, how we can improve our experience, how we can how we can deploy more and more applications, but not just trying to buy more and more real servers, right? Real hardware. So in this case, at that stage, company VMware came up with a solution, and they called it virtualization. So virtualization, it was a game changer, guys. Virtualization, and I will show you guys the idea of virtualization. You still um, you still have many instances of your application and they're running, but the idea is you can just buy for instance, powerful server, and the host operating system or this server operating system, it can be used in order to spin up multiple guest operating systems. But in order to control all of these operating systems or guest operating systems, we have to use extra layer, and this extra layer is called hypervisor, right? Or we can see here on this image, it's called virtualization layer, but realistically we called it hypervisor. And for instance, where VMware or VirtualBox, all of this software, they are hypervisors, right? They allow us to spin up multiple guest operating systems on the same host, and yeah, that's how it is. But even of course this solution was much better compared to buying new servers over and over again. But still, can you imagine if you spin up multiple operating systems, essentially each operating system, it has its own kernel or the core, right? The core logic, right? And then you still have to dedicate some of the resources to each operating system. And that's why you can see you still have operating system, and each instance of your application, it has to run on its own operating system, right? So that's how things work in case of virtualization, right? So again, it's a much better solution, but it's quite costly. It's still quite costly. So, but I'm sure even nowadays, still many companies, they use this approach, but it's not the perfect. And yeah, that's how it is, guys. So guys, the next solution that's, because engineers, they still kind of thinking about, like, yeah, it is a solution, but it's still not a perfect solution, and how we can improve our life. And so the next stage was the introduction of so-called containers. Or so basically, historically, we started thinking about how to containerize things, right? And then we came up with this new technology, right? We call it Docker container. So an idea of Docker container in general, you have a Docker file, which is essentially an instruction of what to do in order to create a Docker image. And essentially, Docker image, it's just an image. As in case of, I guess I didn't mention, in case of a virtual machine, you have a virtual image, right? Or like virtual machine image. And essentially, yeah, in case of Docker containers, we also have images. And the running instance of this Docker image, it's called Docker container. So that's how you can see it here. We have Docker file. We're building. We just using basic Docker commands, and later on I will show you what kind of commands to use in order to create the actual image, generate the actual image. And then later on, when you spin it up and you just literally just run docker run and the actual image, specify actual image, and then your Docker start running. Oh, sorry, your container, like your image starts running, and automatically it becoming a container. So because it's a running instance of image, right? Now it's container, and inside of this container is going to be your application, which is awesome, guys. It's kind of it's sitting in its own bubble, right? In this case. So yeah, that's how it is. Later on we will come back to this image, to this photo, but before that I would like just show you guys another image. So here, guys, you can see, like, if we compare virtual machine versus containers, right? You can see that in case of machine virtualization, we have virtual operating system or guest operating systems, and they all running on the same host operating system. But we still using this extra layer, which is hypervisor layer. So in case of containers, we still have to have infrastructure, or for instance server, right? It still should be on a host operating host machine, right? Or host operating system, we still need it. Then we have extra layer, which is here they call it container engine, but the idea is usually we called it daemon, Docker daemon, I guess. That's how we call it, as far as I remember. And so the idea of this daemon, so it's it's basically allows you to, like, it's like a bridge between actual Docker images or Docker containers. Sorry, in this case, it allows you to communicate between Docker containers, running Docker containers, and the actual host operating system. So, and yeah, in both cases there are some extra layers that we have to provide, but the beauty is we using, like, straight, we using the resources of the host, right? Of host, basically, and we don't need these extra layers. So essentially, in case of virtualization, because you have to spin up so many operating systems, individual operating systems, all of them, they're going to use extra resources. And in case of containers, you don't need it, right? So you don't need them because you straight away using the the host operating system. But yeah, you still, of course, you have to use like so-called namespaces, and you have to use the control groups. I believe that's how we call them. Yeah, control groups. And essentially, it's like, why we need this namespacing. namespaces and control groups. It's in order for host operating system to understand, like, which part is dedicated to which container. So if it makes sense. And yeah, and in case of virtualization, you can say like this hypervisor, it's reading the file, and file contain the information about all of the virtual machines, and essentially still, yeah, hypervisor know how to read this file. And yeah, when I say file, it's like this file, it's like a, it's we have images, right, virtual machine images, and I would just imagine this file as a file that contains information about all these virtual machine images. Yeah, that's how it is, guys. So I think the main benefits, I would like to discuss about main benefits of about containers or Docker containers benefits, compare advantages compared to machine virtualization, right? So first of all, it's really lightweight, right? Secondly, Docker containers, we package essentially what happens. We package a working running instance of application inside of an image, right, and then deploy it. So essentially, it's like as I explained before, it's like it's its own cocoon, right? And essentially, we eliminate these issues of its application is running on one machine and it wouldn't run on another one, right? In case of Docker containers, it's because we just providing this image and then we just spin it up and then the Docker container is running. It just, the beauty is that our application it's sitting in its own environment and it's separated from the rest of the environment, and obviously it doesn't really matter where we're running it because it's always constantly sitting in its own environment. Yeah, so that's how it is, which is can be not the case in case of machine virtualization, right? Because I don't know, you can use Linux virtual machine or Windows virtual machine or and so on, right? And sometimes it can run or sometimes it can have some issues, right, like your application. So that's the beauty, I guess, one of the beauties of Docker containers, right? So yeah, I think in general, guys, I covered the main points about how we came up with the Docker containers, why people constantly needed a better solution, right, or wanted to come up with a better solution in order to provide a good environment for applications and to scale infrastructure much easily and on an easier way. So that's the Docker containers, they allow us to do that, and that's really crucial part to understand. So, and also, guys, I think it's a super portable solution, this Docker containers, because imagine you just need to have like this Docker file, right, and the access to the internet, and basically you just can spin it up, can run this command and use this Docker file, and you can just create a new image and then you can deploy this new image. It's a just beautiful solution. So guys, yeah, which is not the case in case of machine virtualization, right? So yeah, but yeah, in both cases, of course, you still have to provide some resources, have to dedicate some resources. But again, in case of containers, we eliminate this part. It's not that resource consuming because we don't need to spin up multiple guest operating systems as in case of virtual machines. Yeah, so it's much better. And if you guys go back to this image, just briefly, I would like to say like how majority of big companies, or nowadays I guess majority of the companies operate. We use this Docker file in order to generate the Docker image, and then we storing Docker image not locally but we pushing it to Docker registry. In some cases, it can be Docker Hub, or it can be your private Docker registry. So that's how, like, for instance, in case of my company, we're using our private one, right? So, and then later on, you have multiple solutions how to pull this Docker image and spin it up, like in order to run your application. It's super smooth, the whole process. It's just amazing solution. And yeah, it's just great that we came up with that. Thank you very much, guys. I guess it was really long tutorial, but I think at the end of the day, it's worth to discuss about the history, and the history behind the Docker, or behind containerization. It's really it's really important to understand this history, and it's huge one, because somehow we went through all these stages in order to come up with this beautiful solution. And yeah, thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this tutorial, please like it. If you keep watching my tutorials, please subscribe, guys. I really appreciate if you follow me, because it's my passion, to discuss about all these technologies, about technologies like containerization. It just make our life as a software developer is much easier. And yeah, and simplicity, it's always the best way to grow, right? Thank you very much, guys, and goodbye.